Hi, A.S. Fenichel. I promised to read more of Desperate Bride in 2017, and I totally failed. So it's 2018, turning over a new leaf. We're going to get some reading in. I'm going to try to finish the first chapter of Desperate Bride for you, if it's not too long. If it gets too lengthy, I'll just stop. We left off where Dory had offered herself to him. You may have me now if you wish. Her voice trembled. His groin jumped in response to her offer, but he put his hands on her hips and leaned his head against her stomach. She trembled, but stood her ground. Incredible as it sounded, she would allow him to deflower her. "Oh, Dory, you do tempt me." Tentatively, she touched his hair. "I think I heard a butt coming next." He gazed at her perfect face. Her hand was still in his hair, moving in tiny circles. It was an innocent touch, but it felt erotic to him. Any touch from her would have had that effect, he suspected. Forcing a smile, he only wanted to ease her fear of him. "But it would be beneath both of us to make love here in my study without a marriage to make it legal." "Are you saying you will marry me?" No joy bubbled in her voice at the notion. It sounded more like a death sentence had been averted. Then she would only suffer life in prison. He took her hands out of his hair, kissed the back of one, and then the other, and stood, so she could sit in the chair he'd vacated. He pulled another from a few feet away. He sat so close that their knees almost touched. "I hope you will forgive me, Dory, but my answer is no. I cannot believe I am saying it myself. If you truly wish to be my wife, it would make me unspeakably happy. But like this is less than romantic. In fact, it borders on the morbid." She frowned. "I could have come to you with lies and told you I was madly and rapturously in love with you, and could not live without you another moment. Would that have altered your decision?" It might have. A furrow appeared between her brows. Thomas reached out and smoothed the wrinkle. "I'm glad you did not attempt to mislead me, Dory. I wish I could help you. For the first time in my life I wish I was a lord or a knight, so I would be worthy of your hand. However, my station is to be a gentleman, and yours a countess. It would be selfish of me to lower your status in society." She let out a long sigh. "I do not give a damn about titles. I am to be married to a lecherous old man who will keep me as a trophy and perhaps allow me to play pianoforte from time to time to entertain his friends. Everything I have ever wanted tossed aside. My mother will do as she's always threatened and burn all my music." She leaned forward and touched his face. "Everything I am is about to be ripped away from me. Can you understand, Thomas?" He put his hand over hers and kissed her palm. "You are overwrought and have exaggerated the situation. I have never heard anything violent about Henry Casper. Though he is old for you, he lives well and will provide for you in the fashion to which you have been raised." "You are wealthy," she said. He laughed. "I have ample funds, but I am not titled, and never shall be." "You are a snob, Thomas. If I do not care about a title, then why should you?" "You should care, Dory. I will admit that my association with Marlton and now with Kerberg has afforded me more invitations than most gentlemen of my station receive, but I fear you will find life, as Mrs. Wheel, very unappealing." "Are you a man with a terrible temper?" she asked. Surprised by the question, he sat up straighter. "I do not think so." "Would you keep your wife from pursuing her own goals?" "I don't believe so, as long as those goals didn't put her in harm's way." "So if I wanted to join the fire brigade, you would be opposed to that venture?" Her eyes narrowed, but she did not smile. He shook his head but answered, "The fire brigade would be quite a dangerous endeavor, and I would advise my wife against such foolishness." "Yes," she said, "you do sound like a tyrant. I think it is obvious we would not suit." Sarcasm dripped from her words. She squared her shoulders and stood. "I do not believe you have thought this through." He stood with her. She turned and raised her eyebrows. "You believe I am impulsive and rash?" A small voice inside his head told him he should take care with his next statement, but he ignored it. "In this decision you seem to have jumped before looking." Pursing her lips, she nodded. "Do you know what it takes to play the pianoforte as I do?" The question was so out of context, he fumbled for his answer. I believe I do. I have tried to become more accomplished, and my talent has limited me." "Have you sat for hours at a piano to achieve perfection on one stanza?" "I have," he admitted. "I have not heard you play, Thomas, though I hear you are accomplished. And I have heard you say you are not. I suspect you play very well, but are not gifted with that something which makes one musician stand out among the rest." He hated that she was so accurate in her description of his skills. "I do not mean to insult you. It is just fate that makes one person good and another great. A cruel joke, if you will. My curse is being a woman. If I were a man with the talent God gave me, I would play to massive crowds and kings would sponsor me. Not that that's really what I want. I want to be allowed to play every day for the rest of my life. I am not the type who jumps in without looking and have been analyzing my options for weeks. I examined it as I would a new piece of music. You were not a whim of mine to get me out of trouble. I believe we could make a nice marriage." "Nice," he repeated, in the same monotone she gave her speech. "There is nothing wrong with nice." He closed the distance between them. Her chest heaved. "Nice is not good enough for me." His arm came around her waist, and in spite of the 12-inch difference in their height, his lips were on hers before she could protest. She was stiff in his arms, but she put her hands on his shoulders and did not push away. Patience kept him gentle, while he wanted to thrust his tongue into her mouth and taste her sweetness, one sip at a time. He caressed her lips with his. He ran his hand up and down her side from her hip to the edge of her breast, longing to feel her flesh rather than the soft material of her gown. Not touching her anywhere too intimate strained his desires. She softened in his arms. A sigh escaped her lips, and Thomas took the opportunity to sweep the inside of her mouth with his tongue. She gasped, and he plunged inside. Her tongue was less forceful, but she joined him in the pleasure of the kiss. Nipping at her lips, he watched her. "I will think about everything you have said tonight, my lady. I am also cautious and like to give large decisions my full attention before jumping in." So I'm going to stop there because I feel this is getting lengthy. But I hope you enjoyed a little bit more of Desperate Bride. I wrote that part that way because if you've read Tainted Bride or Foolish Bride, you might have some idea that Thomas has harbored this love for Dory and her playing for a long, long time. And I wanted it to be painful for him to say no. And then perhaps change his mind. For the good or the bad. But you'll have to read the book to find out whether it's for good or bad. Maybe it's a little of both. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope you'll pick up a copy of Desperate Bride. You can pick it up wherever you buy digital books or paperbacks. And I'll try again next week to post a little more. Thanks very much.